Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Cricketwala Chronicles with Ayaz Memon.
Hi, this is Pooja from the Fan Garage and you're listening to the Cricketwala Chronicles with Ayaz.
Hello, Pooja.
Hey, Ayaz. T20 cricket, our favorite topic. Of course, it continues to baffle us on many counts over and over again. But, whilst it's the slugfest and the rock and roll cricket, at some level, of course, it's very tactical in nature. It's very strategic and very instinctive, of course, out there on the field. What makes T20 cricket so different from the ODIs?
I think fundamentally the brevity of the format is just 20 overs. So whatever you have to do, it has to be extremely fast-paced, including your thinking. And therefore, the risk factors are high and perhaps even the fact that, your moves or your tactics may fail can be very high also. It's almost as if you can't plot out, a major move overs in advance. It has to be almost instantaneous. Let me try and kind of explain.
Yeah.
So, for instance, in a test match, you have a spinner comes on, he bowls a tight line and length, he starts varying his flight and whatever he has to do.
Yeah.
Then the field is set. He tries to entice the batsman into an error, and gradually it might take 4-5 overs for that.
Yeah, and he has the liberty of 10 overs.
He has the liberty. No, I'm talking even Test cricket.
Test cricket, of course. Sorry.
You might. So there is a lot more time and options available for the captain, the bowler, to see his tactic through. Even there, it may or may not work. That's a different matter.
Sure.
But in T20 cricket, you don't have that freedom, that liberty. The tactics have to be implemented ASAP, and if they don't produce results almost ASAP, then you have to revise them.
Right.
There's no playing out time, so to speak.
It's a lot of thinking on your feet, actually, isn't it?
And constant decision making by the captain and the bowler, of course, and also the batsman. Remember, a dot ball in T20 cricket is anathema.
Right.
And therefore the batsman is also taking high risks.
Absolutely, yes.
So his mortality rate is also higher
Yeah.
in the T20 game. That's why sometimes people are amazed or aghast, and those who are not well versed in the T20 format as yet, 120 run pe pura team out ho gaya. The entire team bowled out for in 18 overs. How can it happen?
Yeah.
It never happens like that in
ODIs.
or Test cricket.
Right.
Or very rarely it happens.
Yeah.
But this is a frequent happening in T20 cricket. That's also because the batsmen are taking more liberties as they have to. There is no dot ball. The dot ball is actually a negation of any tactic.
Absolutely.
From the batting point of view.
Yeah.
So there is a constant kind of a, ding-dong battle between the bat and ball, which is more pronounced. It is there in every cricket, in every format.
Yeah.
It is the contest between bat and ball.
Correct.
But here, it's, almost like the batsman and the bowler are straining at the leash. There's no great time to say, let me plot it over the next 4-5 overs, or let me wear down this bowler with some defensive batting, and then once I'm on top of the bowling, I'll get after them.
Yeah.
That liberty does not exist. So time is of the essence. And number of deliveries.
So clearly there's a lot of strategy at play from both sides. And, it wouldn't be entirely wrong to call it perhaps the cricketing version of speed chess.
In a sense, yes.
Yeah.
There are obviously, the old school of thought believes that these may be tactics, but there's no strategy. Strategy may be long drawn.
Yeah.
As speed chess, you have to make very swift tactical moves.
Yeah.
What you think might result in your favor. But in the ordinary version of chess, or the normal version of chess,
right,
you plot moves in advance strategically.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yes, the parallel is correct. But I think that in the T20 format, there are a few things that are very different. It's very high energy. There's an energy rush.
Yeah.
So sometimes the tactic may become less consequential than the fact of showing aggression or energy.
And perhaps the ability to take quick decisions, because the game is so
big
fast.
Risks,
yeah.
And big risks.
Yes.
I think fundamental to this game is big risks, at least from the batting point of view, if not the bowling. The bowlers still have to bowl with tight control and try and peg down the runs, if not get a wicket.
Right.
But the batting side certainly has to go, for the big risks, because otherwise if they get shackled, then to come out of those shackles can be, either too late or almost impossible.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's often said that, I mean, if there were to ever be a dummy's guide to T20 cricket, the side batting first, kind of needs to bat at an average of 9 to put up a healthy score of 180.
9 is what we are saying now.
Yeah.
Because scores have gone up to 180, 200 more frequently
Yes.
than in the past when it started. If you remember, even the first IPL season, very rarely the scores were above 160.
Correct. I mean, 140 was considered a high defendable score.
So depending on the pitch and depending on the conditions and
Yeah.
depending on the bowling attack, obviously those are strong determinants in what the final score of the team batting would be.
Right.
But clearly what has happened, the way it's evolved, that over the past 10 years, say, since T20 cricket has come into being, and certainly after T20 World Cup and IPL, batsmen are taking bigger risks and getting away with it, maybe because of the bats, the shorter boundaries, whatever you call it, but the par score has certainly moved up.
Right.
I think batsmen have become far more inventive because ultimately it's the play overtly by the batsmen as to how many runs I score batting first
Yeah.
and how many runs I ask them to chase.
Right.
So
But-
the bowlers still have to restrict the runs.
Absolutely, yes. That being the prime motive and
Correct.
single point agenda, clearly. And, it's sadly for them, they only have 4 overs within which to sort of...
Or happily for them. Sometimes you get hit so badly all over the park that you don't want another over and your captain keeps looking at you. A bowler comes, first over you concede 16, 17 runs.
Yeah.
The bowler is actually not looking at the captain and hoping that he won't look at me again for another over. See, the thing is, from a bowler's point of view, T20 is far more damaging than, say, ODIs and certainly more than Test cricket because your reputation can be in tatters almost instantly.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Ben Stokes
Yeah.
bowled the final over of the T20 World Cup final to Carlos Braithwaite, who's actually a lower order batsman. He's not a top order batsman.
That's right,
He was
yeah.
a powerful hitter.
Yeah.
But Ben Stokes in the semi-final had bowled a marvellous final couple of overs.
Yeah.
He brought the run rate, or he actually increased the run rate for the asking rate for the team batting, chasing, that is New Zealand.
Yeah.
And he was a hero. And therefore he was the automatic choice to be
bowl
given
the final over in the
to bowl
final
the final
match,
over.
yeah.
And you know what happened in the final over? Carlos Braithwaite hit him for 4 sixes.
Absolutely,
So when he
yeah.
was hit for the first 6, he said, okay, this happens.
Right.
Second 6, he starts disbelieving, he starts rubbing his eyes in disbelief. The third 6, he doesn't know where to hide. He doesn't want to complete the over.
Yeah, I mean...
And that's Ben Stokes, the leading all-rounder in the world currently.
yeah.
So imagine the plight of other bowlers. So therefore, when things are not going well, and generally the bowlers come under scrutiny far more than anybody else.
Yes.
Because, their job is not to give away. I mean, if you say that the par score is 9 runs per over, if you give more than 36 in 4 overs, you actually flopped.
Yeah.
Unless you picked up 3 or 4 wickets.
Right.
So, the tendency of the bowlers is to try and be restrictive, but that also is changing now. More and more they believe that, and rightly so, that they need to get wickets, because that, even if you concede a few runs, like it's happened in ODIs. Originally when ODI started, the attitude and the approach of the bowlers was restrict. It doesn't, if you bowl 10 overs for 30 runs, you've taken no wickets, you've done a damn good job.
Yeah.
Then that thinking changed, the approach changed. In a one-day game now, if you bowl 10 overs, you've given away even 55 runs, but if you picked up 4 or 5 wickets, your team is more likely to win.
Right.
So wicket taking has become important even in ODI cricket. Earlier, as I mentioned earlier, that in Test cricket you would plot and plan. Even fast bowlers, when you open with the new ball and you kind of try to seduce the batsman outside the off stump to get an edge.
Yes.
You have to keep bowling a tight line, get the ball to move away a little bit. It may take 3, 4, 5 overs till you get the edge.
Yeah.
Get an indiscretion from the batsman.
Yeah.
In limited overs cricket, that was narrowed down. You had only 10 overs.
Right.
And in here, it's narrowed down even further. It's only 4 overs.
Only 4 overs, exactly.
So if you're not an instant success, at least in bottling up the runs, then, you're letting the team down, so to speak.
But then, T20 tends to be more skewed and more in favor of the batsman.
Yes, there are reasons for that, some of which I don't agree. For instance, and this is more pronounced in the IPL, to be honest, that the boundaries have shrunk. Generally in the IPL, you'll find boundaries between 65 and 70 yards, not 75 yards
That's
or 80
right.
yards.
Yeah.
That's because the tendency of the administrators has been to make the game more attractive, and by that they mean let's see more boundaries and sixes, because that's
Let's keep the audiences entertained.
audiences and also television audiences, because
Correct.
that becomes kind of a spectacular show.
Absolutely.
It's a highly nuanced game. A left arm spinner or a outswing bowler or a leg spinner beating the bat by a couple of inches is a magnificent, manifestation of what cricket is all about. But it's not a great spectacle
Yeah.
for the viewers sitting in the stands, and perhaps not even for people who are watching it at home on television, unless the expert tells you just exactly.
Unless you're talked through
Unless
that.
you're talked through that, and
Yeah.
now of course there are slow-mos and replays and all which accentuate that.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
the thrill of watching a batsman stepping out and hitting a six remains unmatched.
Absolutely, yeah.
The only parallel I can draw, which comes very close to that kind of a thrill, is a spinner enticing a batsman down the pitch, beating him in the air, getting him stumped.
Yeah.
That's fantastic to watch.
Yeah.
Or a great catch. Somebody slashes hard and a great catch taken at point.
Yeah.
Diving catch. Those
Yeah.
are spectacular moments. They stand alone.
Yes.
Irrespective, it's not linked necessarily to the batting. But otherwise, batsmen, and they've dominated the game in perception in
Always,
time
yeah.
immemorial.
Correct.
What's happened in T20 is that boundaries have shrunk, bats have got better, mishits are travelling 65, 70 yards easily.
Yeah.
So, what would otherwise have been a catch on the fence ends up becoming a six.
Correct.
And therefore, it gets loaded more and more in favour of the batsman.
Right.
And against the bowler. That, I think, needs to be redressed or addressed. I think they need to even out, make it more equal for the bowlers also, so that it doesn't become a very lopsided thing. I mean, ultimately, as a viewer, and somebody who enjoys watching, say, T20 cricket,
Yeah.
if the scores come down from 180 to 160, but the competition between bat and ball is better, I would still take that.
Yeah.
Rather than take scores of 180, which is going to become 190 and 200 and 220. Even in ODIs, the par score is now almost, 300 seems to be almost, an everyday occurrence.
Correct. That's right. I mean, in fact,
Earlier, reaching 250 was a task.
absolutely. And chasing that was an even bigger
So
task.
that's because bats have become better, the field placings differ.
Right.
So I think that to get the bowlers a little more involved in the game, even tactically, there is no point for a spinner to try and flight the ball and try and beat the batsman in the air, get him to miscue a shot and then to see it go for a six.
Yeah.
That's, very demoralizing. And ultimately where the contest is concerned, it becomes lopsided. The scales tilt more heavily in favor of the batsman, which I think needs to be addressed.
But also, typically a good batsman, and if he's in rich vein of form, as you say, he could actually last out the entire innings or a good 10, 12 overs.
We've seen that happen.
Absolutely. Whereas a bowler gets only four overs to sort of make a mark. I mean, so it's really clearly very heavily loaded towards the batsman.
Well,
isn't it?
that's the problem of limited overs cricket. That even in ODIs, the bowler had only 10 overs.
Yeah.
In test matches, a bowler can bowl from one end right through.
Right.
There have been bowlers who bowled 60, 70 overs, spinners generally,
Yeah.
in the course of an innings. The idea of limited overs was you express the bowling attack through various people. I mean, there have been arguments earlier also that if it's a 50-over game, why can't one guy bowl 25 overs and leave it to the captain to decide who else will bowl? Or just two bowlers bowling 25 overs each.
Yeah.
But there is a humdrumness to it which may not find appeal for those who are anyway moving away from test cricket.
Yeah.
Seeing somebody bowl a maiden over after maiden over after maiden over in test cricket also has its, fatigue factor.
Well, I mean, whilst there could be magic in terms of pure cricketing prowess, from a spectator point of view,
Correct.
and even from a commentary point of view, actually.
No, commentary apart. From a spectator, ultimately commentary is, beholden to the spectator.
Yes.
If there are no viewers and there are no spectators, there's no point of the commentary.
Right.
So I think for the spectators, obviously, see, sometimes a contest, somebody bowling 5-6 maiden overs on the trot in a test match is great to watch. But if it is 20 maiden overs, then perhaps the problem is with the batsman.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, the job of the batsman is to score runs. It's not to be shackled.
Yes.
In any format.
Correct.
So limited overs cricket took that as a defining element and said, we can't let it get into a sphere where it gets boring for the viewer, which is one of the problems why test cricket was floundering.
Yes.
And therefore, restricted number of overs. But from a batsman's point of view, it's difficult to, conceivably you can say, you have 10 overs to bat and then you go. and make as many as you can.
Yeah.
But what if he's there for 10 overs and doesn't get the strike, gets the strike only for 5 balls? So
Yeah.
there are illogics to, there's an illogical element to how much you can restrict the batsman, you can restrict the bowler.
Yeah. We'll take a short break over here, Ayaz, but we'll come back to discuss more on the T20 strategy from a bowler's point of view.
Rants, crazy conversations, absurd questions, and everything in between. Cyrus Says is the podcast where I, Cyrus Brocha, let loose and talk to interesting people from across different walks of life. Well, people who are available, actually, not more than that. Catch new episodes every Monday on iTunes, Audio Boom, or the all-new IVM Podcast app. Happy listening, but only for a few minutes.
Hi, this is Pooja from the Fan Garage, and we're back listening to the Cricketwala Chronicles with Ayaz. Discussing, of course, the strategic and tactical approaches taken by both batsmen and bowlers in T20 cricket. Coming from the bowler's perspective, would it be entirely right to say that fast bowlers and spinners are more effective, perhaps, in T20 than medium pacers?
Well, look, I think earlier the feeling was that the fast bowlers might be a problem because you get an edge, you get 4 runs. Difficult to protect the runs.
Yeah.
I think what has come through very clearly in the T20 game is that whichever kind of bowler you are, whether you are a fast bowler or a medium pacer or a spinner, you have to have multiple variations. If you don't have variations, then you're in for slaughter.
Yes.
The minute the batsman
often we
senses
see
you,
bowlers, bowling
all of
out
them.
a different delivery in each ball. In one
not,
over.
not just each ball. For instance, somebody like Dwayne Bravo, who's been enormously successful
Yeah.
in T20 cricket, has probably 12 variations and he's got only 6 balls to bowl.
Correct.
So you have to work a lot in the nets and try and master at least those bowlers, those deliveries, because otherwise you're going to have a problem. See, the more T20 that is played, more and more batsmen are reading the bowlers better, and
Yeah.
therefore bowlers need to keep evolving, and vice versa.
Absolutely, yeah. Bowlers trying to outthink and outfox the
So
batsman.
you got
Brilliant.
now, holding the seam up, cross seam, bouncers which are of various, speeds, velocity.
Yeah.
Bouncers which are of different lengths. Sometimes you have a bouncer which is like just loops over the batsman's shoulder, so to speak.
Yes.
But he's unprepared.
Yeah.
Because he didn't anticipate. He thought perhaps
didn't see that one coming, clearly, yeah.
This is a fast bowler who's going to bowl at me at least at 135, 140. He's actually bowled it at 110, but it's a bouncer.
Yeah. Or
At
the
a
wide Yorker, for that matter.
Or the wide Yorker, which is not wide enough to be called a wide.
Right.
But, leaves the batsman kind of...
With no room to sort of take the shot, yeah.
Exactly. So, and the Yorkers that are and the carom ball.
Yes.
And the experiment by spinners using their fingers in different ways.
Right.
In trying to get, at least, baffle the batsman
Yeah,
as to
and
what
of
he might
course
be trying to
Sunil
do.
Narayan is a
Sunil
magician
Narayan
with
is
that,
there,
yeah.
R. Ashwin. Sometimes it can backfire.
Yes.
R. Ashwin, you experiment too much, it can backfire till you master.
Yes.
Ultimately experimentation is a process of learning and, kind of solidifying your skills. So, from a bowler's point of view, certainly. And I think fundamentally it's this. The bowler has to kind of outthink the batsman even more than the batsman has to outthink the bowler.
Yeah.
In terms of thought process, I think because the bowler's at the receiving end, the batsman still got a bat in his hand and can, he's supposed to be the aggressor.
That's
The
right.
bowler has to outthink the batsman, as anticipate what he might do, be a step ahead, so to speak. And also in consonance with the captain,
Of course, yes.
because that's how you'll set the field, whether to protect the boundary or to get somebody out or whatever it takes.
Yeah, I was in fact going to come to that. I mean, the captain is far more involved in a T20 game, because there's so much quick decision making, instinctive thinking, intuitive approach.
Yes, I think intuitive approach is a nice phrase to use because ultimately what you rely on, and it may not necessarily work. Sometimes it works brilliantly. I mean, even now there's speculation, there's debate, there's a lot of talk as to why Mahendra Singh Dhoni chose Joginder Sharma
Yeah.
to bowl the last over in the 2007 World Cup which India won. Last over.
Yes.
Can you imagine? He's a rookie.
Yeah.
It's India versus Pakistan. It's Misbah-ul Haq on strike, who's played a terrific knock to bring Pakistan that close. It's the last over of the match.
Yeah.
And he gives the ball to Joginder Sharma. There's something that is going on in his mind.
Right.
Some critics then reckon that there was nothing in his mind. That's
Yeah.
why he gave it to
I mean, if the result had
Joginder
gone
Sharma.
the other way, it would have been death knell for that decision making.
That's the call which the batsman, which the captain has to make.
Correct.
It was almost why almost? It was an all or nothing move.
Absolutely.
So you play your gut.
Yeah.
And it worked. If it had bombed, then we don't know what might have happened, how the career trajectory would have been for so many people concerned.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think, and that happens this is the most melodramatic example one can give, but it happens at every stage. The decision to bowl a spinner first up is a mighty call to take.
Yeah.
You don't know how the pitch is going to behave, especially if you're playing overseas or outside of your conditions. Mahendra Singh Dhoni playing in England, leading a team in England or Australia or the West Indies or wherever in a T20 match,
Correct.
may not be as familiar with the pitches and the conditions as he is in India.
Absolutely.
He may be a very good reader of the pitch, but there's still the element of risk is higher, and therefore he's thinking through something. He's planning and saying, if Ashwin can get me these 2 overs, maybe a break, then this is what I can do with the rest of my bowling.
But then isn't that more of an experimentative approach also?
It has to be.
Yeah.
I think you can plot and plan as much as you want, outside of the boundary. And this is a shorter game. Therefore, a lot more planning goes into it than, say, in test matches. Test matches, you might have a general broad-based planning.
Yes.
In ODIs, it's a little more comprehensive. But here, it might be far more specific in the T20 format.
Right.
It is the closest you can think of to the other team sports like hockey and football, where the managers, the coaches, and in fact, in the other sports, the captains don't have a role to play.
Exactly, my point, yeah.
But here the captain still is the decisive influence, and he may just change his strategy after the first ball is bowled.
Right.
And he'll say, we've all misread the pitch. Now we have to, or the first over is bowled. And he says, hey, I thought that I'm going to have spinners bowling the first 4-5 overs. I'm going to change my tactic.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring in my fast bowler or my medium pacer or whatever. Or I'm going to change ends. These are all things that exist in cricket at every level and in every format. It's just that the pace of decision making is
in T20 is far more expedited.
It's far more expedited.
And of course, then the importance of the death overs, the significance that they can play and they have, in fact, to the result of a match.
Correct. So sometimes death overs is very crucial because that's when batsmen take the most liberties. If they are 100, they'll want to reach 150. If they're 150, they want to reach 220.
Correct.
Say in the last 5 overs.
That's of course for the side batting first. But
the side batting first. Yes. So if you're fielding first in your death overs, if you got somebody at 100 with 5 overs remaining, then your attempt is to try and restrict it to 140.
Yeah.
Not 150 or 160 or 180.
Correct.
And therefore how you manipulate your bowlers in that period and how the bowlers bowl, the field you set, all becomes very crucial.
Yes.
So there is a constant byplay of tactics between the bowler and the captain and the fielders and certainly the senior pros. Likewise, the batsmen when they are in the middle, apart from what you may have planned earlier, how things have transpired may be very different from what you had thought.
Absolutely,
sitting in the dugout.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, which is one of my favorite instances of how tactics can change mid-course in the middle of a match.
Yeah.
You had against Australia and against Pakistan, Mahendra Singh Dhoni and Virat Kohli batting.
Right.
And these were tense matches. India versus Pakistan, India versus Australia. Both
Always,
of them very tense. Not easy to get runs.
And on a World Cup stage.
In a World Cup stage. And Mahendra Singh Dhoni batting means you've already lost a few wickets.
Right.
You don't want to lose one more.
Absolutely.
Kohli is in great form.
Yeah.
He's not Chris Gayle. He's not the big 6 hitter.
Yeah.
Which we saw later in the IPL. But in the World Cup, he wasn't. And in fact, he said that.
Yeah.
So he's a boundary hitter. They're choking his boundaries. And they decided that they would make up for the lack of boundaries or the lack of sixes by running hard, putting pressure on the fielders and getting those runs so that the run rate, the asking run rate doesn't climb higher than what you can achieve.
Right.
So,
and we saw some extremely quick running between the wickets. Yes.
And obviously it requires a lot of fitness, understanding and all that.
Yeah.
So instead of having 2 boundaries and a single in an over, you had 4 twos.
Yeah.
And maybe a single. You still got 9 runs.
Absolutely.
It took a lot more effort.
Yeah.
But
on the part of the batsman.
On the part of the batsman.
Yeah.
But they did that to disorient the fielding side, mess up their, the rival team's approach in field setting and in bowling. And therefore, tactically, it paid off. In both the matches, India won.
Yeah. Of course. Yes.
That we were hit out of the final by the West Indies who went on to win the tournament is a different story.
Correct.
But I'm saying, so this is very clear as to how the tactic can change in the middle. But that tactic might not work with a Chris Gayle. Because he is stiff. His body is stiff.
Yeah.
He's not a good runner between wickets.
Absolutely not, yes.
He's
a power hitter,
he's
a big
power
hitter. Yeah.
This is possible when you've got players like De Villiers and Kohli.
Yeah.
But not De Villiers and Gayle or De Villiers or Kohli and Gayle.
Yeah.
At that point in time, the tactic will be for Gayle to go for the big shots.
Correct.
Kohli to perhaps, hold one end up till, he also needs to go for the big shots.
Right.
And so therefore, it's very dynamic. the tactical play is very, very dynamic. And it's not something that finds any reflection in Test cricket, certainly. Because there, the whole tactical approach of the batsmen, even when they're running, even there they'll minimize the risk by running between the wickets, not taking the second so readily.
Yeah.
Because they've got time on their side.
Yes.
You won't have guys hitting the ball, helter-skelter from both sides of the pitch, because there's no need to. It's a 5-day game. The risk quotient has to be brought down. In T20, whether you like it or not, the risk quotient has to keep getting higher and higher, especially as you're approaching the climax of your inning.
That's true. But then, would you say that how important is it then? Of course, we've seen the strategy from the batsmen and the bowlers. I mean, fielding plays a big role in the match, isn't it? I mean, saving runs is of course topmost, and we've seen some brilliant fielding catches and dives.
Pooja, I think that's that's become fundamental to the game.
Yes,
it's not something that you watch when fielders are being put in their positions, because that's not what the camera shows. The camera will focus on the batsman talking to each other, or bowler getting instructions from the captain or setting his field.
Right.
It's minimal.
Yeah.
But especially in the T20 game, where every ball, a dot ball, is like manna from the heavens for a bowler.
For the
or
bowler,
a fielding
yes.
side.
Yes.
A maiden over is
like the biggest jackpot that a bowler could have got for his side.
So, fielding becomes extraordinarily important in the context of a T20 game. And let me tell you how it also works tactically. Yeah. And this is interesting. Perhaps there's a lesson there also for players.
Yeah.
So, Royal Challengers Bangalore in this season of the IPL, barring the first 3 games or maybe 4 games, didn't play Sarfaraz Khan.
Right.
Virat Kohli took the decision not to play Sarfaraz Khan, who's otherwise a very inventive player.
Yes.
Successful the previous season,
Absolutely.
didn't do too badly in the first 4 matches.
Yeah.
There were reasons for it. I mean, people said, he was being disciplined and all that. I don't believe that. Even I thought that initially. But even if it was there, that was a marginal decision. The bigger decision was he's not fit.
Right.
In the field, he's costing me 10-12 runs.
Right.
For an 18-19-year-old, that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
He's a very good runner between the wickets, but he's not like Dhoni and Kohli.
Right.
He could make the difference to a team's fortunes by not being able to take one or two extra runs.
Yeah, which otherwise you can be slightly liberal with in an ODI, but clearly in T20 it needs to be so tight.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, in a test match scenario, the fantastic temperament of a batsman or his ability to play great strokes might be seen as a great bonus vis-a-vis perhaps a little, slackness in the fielding. I can hide him at third man, deep mid-wicket.
That's true,
deep point.
Yeah.
Because I value the runs he'll bring me. In a T20, that becomes difficult.
Yeah. And also, we've seen most T20 matches, the margin of victory is so minimal.
Exactly.
It's a run, if not 2.
I mean, a 30-40 run victory is like an innings victory.
Absolutely,
If that margin is so big, that means the team has been completely outplayed.
So
usually,
any runs lost or slipped on the field can cost the side.
Correct. So the margin of victory is generally 10 runs or less.
Yes.
And it's in the second last or last over that you'll find the finishes.
Yes.
That means how close it is.
Yeah.
You have to be, apart from the tension of it, these things become very crucial.
Yeah.
The fitness of a player. Even of a batsman, if you can't, suppose you're batting 20 overs and you can't run between the wickets. One of the great things that Kohli showed this season was and De Villiers, the stamina they had.
Of course.
In match after match after match, they're batting 10, 12, 15 overs in the IPL.
Yeah.
And Kohli used to be hardly out of breath.
Yes.
Which showed.
That you really need to be on the top of your fitness.
Top of the game. So, from a captain's point of view, that's also a tactical decision to take. I may rest one of my key batsmen.
Yeah.
Because he may give me 20 runs, but he may cost me 12 runs.
Right.
So my net gain is 8 runs. I take a less known player who may give me 15 runs, but he may be 8-10 runs plus in the field. So my net gain is 25 runs, not 8.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a...
Well, yeah, clearly, but, of course, we've talked batsmen and bowlers and fielders, but in my mind, the fundamental question remains, especially in T20 cricket, when you win a toss, do you bat or you bowl first?
That remains in any format, whether you bat or bowl first.
But more so in T20 because, you've...
No, I think there are various things which come into play. And I'll tell you. One is, of course, the conditions. So, for instance, you get into a ground, you find that the conditions are overcast. You followed the Met report and or the Met report tells you that these clouds or this overcast conditions will pass in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Why would you bat first? You would bowl first. Or if you know that the Met Office is saying that there is likelihood of showers later in the day, perhaps overcast conditions, then why would you want to bat second and take that risk where the bowlers will get more help?
But clearly for the side that's batting or bowling first, they really don't know how to sort of pace themselves or what sort of bowling attack to put in place.
You have to wait.
Yeah.
You see, the thing is, by and large, now players or captains know what the par score is. Unless the pitch is so poor, the conditions are so daunting.
Yeah.
So conditions make a big difference. The other thing is how captains read the pitch, and then of course their own personal preferences. Some captains prefer to chase. Some captains prefer a total behind them, and they would be happier defending.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
As a rule of thumb, it used to be said in at least in Test match cricket, win the toss and bat.
Yeah.
Make first use of a pitch which has been freshly laid.
That's true.
And then we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Generally, that rule used to apply when there were uncovered pitches. Now all pitches are covered.
That's true, yes. I mean, there's so much of technology that has come in.
So a lot of things change. And, I can tell you an example, and it's from Test cricket. That India were playing England at Lords in 1990.
Yeah.
Azharuddin was the captain and Graham Gooch was the English captain. Azharuddin won the toss and put England into bat because there was, it was a grey sky.
Right.
It was overcast. And everything suggested that it would help the bowlers. But the English weather is fickle.
Yes, don't we all know?
The clouds passed in about 35 or maybe 40 minutes, and Graham Gooch went on to score 333. And England scored a mountain of runs. Yes, India had got a chance to get him out at 33. He edged Sanjeev Sharma, the fast bowler, behind the wickets. More dropped the catch. That was the end of India's chances.
Yeah.
Now, Azharuddin, had he known more about English weather, because that was also his first tour to England.
Correct.
Or maybe his second, first as a captain.
Yeah.
Maybe his decision would have been different.
Right.
But that's something he's lived and learned.
Yes.
Or any captain or the players in that team would have lived and learned. But the first impulse was overcast conditions, bowlers will get help, let me bowl.
Yeah.
So things can work, things can rebound, things can boomerang, all kind of things can happen. I think ultimately most successful captains over a period of time, when you look at their body of work, they've been able to overcome the handicaps and the limitations imposed by conditions and the pitches, because either they've been blessed with a very good team, or they've been able to tide over these handicaps through strength of personality and by being able to motivate the teams to do better. Yeah, look, we've got stuck. The ball's swinging around. The conditions are not helping us. I don't want a loss of wicket. I'm talking of a test match scenario, but in a T20 scenario, shut shop. Make sure you don't lose the wickets. We'll see what happens in the second session.
Yeah.
Then you have to have players who show the discipline.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the temperament.
Yeah.
So, these are all multiple things that can influence the course of a match. But yeah, you're right that ultimately it all boils down to the captain in his decision making. Not just what he does after winning the toss, but what he does at every stage. Remember, this is a unique sport. After every delivery bowled in cricket is a discrete event in itself. It's a standalone.
Right.
A captain can ask the bowler to bowl, or the bowler might choose to bowl over the wicket, next ball round the wicket, the next ball again over the wicket and round the wicket, and all he has to do is inform the umpire.
Right.
Which is not possible in any other sport. So there's decision making involved with almost every delivery.
That's true, yeah.
And that gets even more pronounced in T20.
Yes.
Because there's a constant
dialogue, so to speak, on the field,
and an immediate and discernible consequence of every delivery bowled.
Right.
If it's blocked and no run is given, the pressure is on the batting side.
Right.
If the batsman hits it for 4 runs or 6 runs, the pressure is on the fielding side.
Right.
So there's a constant, byplay. It's very dynamic. It's very demanding.
Yes. But of course, one must also sort of keep in mind that it's such a new and young form of the game. I mean,
and
as we
it's
discussed,
evolving.
Yes, it's only a decade or so old. And it would be fascinating to see over the years how the statistics stack up and how actually, if there ever can be defining tactics in this form of game. So that's something that we shall all sort of be happy to sit on the sidelines and watch. But thank you for listening in. Signing out for the day, Cricketwala Chronicles with Ayaz. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pooja. Pleasure as always.
Cricketwala Chronicles is available on iTunes, Audioboom, YouTube, the IVM Podcast app, and many other podcasting apps that you may like.
Hey man, just help me out, man. I need some podcast, man. I haven't had a fix in a week. Just need some.
Don't you worry about it. I got podcast galore for you, man. Just go to ivmpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna check it out.